Hello, I'm here today with Irina. Irina wrote a really interesting article called The Complexity of Learning, exploring the interplay of different mediational means in group learning with digital tools. And that article is part of the MOOC, and you'll find that on the list. And we're doing this in English since the article was written in English. Could you explain to me briefly, what is this article about?
Well, the main intention with this article was to come into the classroom and to explore the landscape of the learning process that happens in the classroom when the technology is in place. What is it to learn with technology in the real classroom? Because we all know if you come to the real classroom, we see that not only technology is present. Teachers use textbooks, teachers use students as resources to themselves, teachers assist students in their learning. So it's a really complicated landscape. So in this article, I wanted to examine or investigate what this landscape is all about, what this complexity is all about.
Mm-hmm. And there's a case, you're studying a specific situation. Could you explain what that case is about?
Yes, this case study was about learning in science in Norwegian lower secondary school. So there were students of the 10th grade, aged between 15 and 16, which were studying science, the topic genes and inheritance over the course of 10 weeks. And me as a researcher, I observed this learning process that happened over several lessons, over several hours.
And they were studying two different concepts, weren't they?
Yes, in this particular case, the students were developing their conceptual understanding about the normal cell division, which is mitosis, and the sex cell division, which is meiosis.
And could you explain what the four different tools that the students use are?
Well, in particular, I looked how digital tools, and specifically the digital animation students use in their studies were used. How the task facilitated students' learning, the task that was developed by the teacher. How students helped themselves to develop their understanding about these scientific concepts, and the role of the teacher. Together with this, I looked how these resources or tools, as we say, mediational tools from the socio-cultural perspective, interplayed and affected in a way each other in the learning process.
And what did you find then?
Well, I found actually neither of these tools exist on themselves. Well, actually they are all combined in a so-called dialectical interplay, which means that each of these tools in a way determines how another tool is used. Let me just explain it in simple words. For example, what I saw in this case study is that digital animations that shows the process of cell division were analyzed and examined by the students from the perspective of the compare and contrast tasks. The students were supposed to solve the compare and contrast task, and they analyzed what they saw in animations from the differences and similarities, perspective of differences and similarities between these two processes. And actually this determined the content of the discussions that happened in the group between the students. And when the teacher came to help the students, actually his assistance to the students was also determined by the content of the digital animations the students were working with, and by the length of the compare and contrast tasks the students were working on. Together with this, he integrated into the students' discussions. So in a way, the ways a teacher assisted the students was also affected by what students talked about at this particular moment. So the main message is that learning with digital tools is a complex situation in classrooms, and all mediational tools interplay with each other by creating a structure that supports students' learning in the classroom.
Right, so the student had an animation that they were supposed to compare and contrast, like what's one process and what's the other, and then they used each other and talked, and they used the paper that they had, and then the teacher was also involved.
Exactly. And by analyzing this whole landscape, we can see the interplay between the material tools Again, this is the paper-based textbook, for example, and the animations and the task that was designed by the teacher, and the so-called social tools, which were collaborating peers and the teacher.
So asking each other questions, the others, they were helping, explaining, well, look at this, and guiding the others. So if you look at this model or this page, right?
Exactly.
So that's the social tool.
Yeah, that's
each
the
other.
social tool. Yeah, students as resources for each other. Because this would happen. So they explicated their understandings or misunderstandings at some point. They built on each other, they elaborated each other's answers, and in doing so, they developed their mutual conceptual understanding about these processes and solved the compare and contrast task.
So this scenario, this case is kind of a different way of teaching than just if the teacher had done a lecture on these two different processes, isn't it?
Yes, and it actually shows how technology can be integrated and brought into the classroom, and where students are active and central in their learning process themselves. Because very often teachers are unsure how to integrate technology in an effective way and make students active learners and active drivers of their learning process themselves. So actually this case study, and this study indicates the way technology can be integrated into the classrooms, and together with this promote students' active learning.
And an important point would be then that technology is just a little bit of this whole learning process and this teaching situation, learning situation.
You're absolutely right. And this is all we have to be aware about. So the technology does not solve all the pedagogical issues and all the pedagogical problems. And the teachers will need to think about this whole structure they will need to create that will integrate technology in the learning process and will support students' learning with technology in an effective way.
So what is the most important takeaway from this article? If you were to sum it up, what's the most important thing?
I believe the most important is that we have to understand that learning with technology is complex, and technology is almost never on itself in the picture in the learning process. We say that there are other material resources, also textbooks, and for example the tasks created by the teacher, and students present valuable social resources for themselves. And the teacher, we should consider teacher as a resource also. And actually the teachers who would like to bring technologies into the classroom will have to think how these resources interplay into the learning situations and how they facilitate and support students' learning.
Well, thank you very much for this participating in this discussion with me.
Thank you, Ann-Therese.